They laughed as the ashes clung to her face, sticking to her skin like a mark of humiliation she had never earned. The nobles watched with thin smiles. The servants snickered behind their hands, and even the children, taught from birth to mirror the cruelty of their elders, pointed at her trembling frame. She stood in the center of the great hall, silent and shaking, her dress stained with soot from the hearth where they had forced her to kneel. In a world where power shaped every breath, she had none. Not a name that commanded respect, not a family strong enough to defend her, not even a voice anyone cared to hear, but the court that mocked her, the lord who humiliated her, and the women who spat at her feet would all learn a truth they never imagined. Silence is not weakness. It is the patience of someone who understands that the world has a way of turning, and that those who rise from the dust do so with a clarity that terrifies the powerful. The girl they shoved into smoke and soot would eventually rise from the ashes as the one person the entire kingdom feared, and the one they would bow to, kiss the ring of, and beg for mercy when mercy was already too late. Before we begin this untold chapter of history and follow her ascent from disgrace to unimaginable power, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you never miss the stories of those the world underestimated, until the day they rewrote the fate of empires. They called her Ash Girl long before they bothered to learn her real name. In the winter of 1312, when the river froze so solid that carts could cross without creaking, the cold inside Lord Aldrich's manor was far harsher than the one outside. Servants whispered that the new girl, Elara, though no one used the name, had arrived at the gates with nothing but a torn cloak and a letter sealed with a crest no one recognized. The steward read the message, frowned, and without a word sent her to the kitchen to scrub stone floors already slick with grease. And from that moment, the house decided she was too quiet, too observant, too composed for someone of her station. In a world built on hierarchy, calmness from the lowborn was treated not as virtue, but as defiance. Women in the laundry room mocked the way she carried herself, straight-backed, graceful even under buckets of boiling linens. The stable boys kicked ashes toward her as she swept near the hearth. The noble daughters laughed at the way her hair frayed from the steam and soot. Yet Elara endured it with that unsettling silence. She worked with a focus that unnerved people who lived from outburst to outburst. Her hands moved steadily, her breath measured, as if she lived behind an invisible wall where their cruelty could not reach. What no one understood, what they never bothered to ask, was the reason she carried herself with the quiet dignity of someone raised far above her current station. The truth lay hidden in the letter she arrived with, a letter that the steward, by order of Lord Aldrich, never delivered, a letter that could have prevented everything that followed. Elara's father had been a minor lord in the south, one who died suddenly, leaving unpaid debts and land contested by ambitious rivals. Her mother, a foreign-born woman the nobility never accepted, had been pushed out of court with her daughter in tow. When illness took her life on the road north, she begged Elara to seek out Lord Aldrich, who had once sworn loyalty to her father. But loyalty was a frail thing in an age where alliances shifted like wind on a battlefield. Lord Aldrich read the letter, recognized the crest, and felt the old danger coil in his stomach. If the girl was acknowledged, others might follow. Dispossessed nobles, claimants with old grievances, names tied to forgotten wars. A single orphan could resurrect complications he had buried 2 decades earlier. So he hid the letter, ordered the steward to assign her menial work, and pretended she was no one of consequence. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The household festivals came and went. During the midwinter feast, when guests filled the hall with laughter and heavy wine, Elara was forced to kneel by the hearth to stoke the fire, her face streaked with soot, while noblewomen glided past her in silk edged with fox fur. One of them, Lady Renette, Lord Aldrich's niece, tossed a handful of ashes at her, laughing as they clung to Elara's hair. "Look at her," Renette said loudly. "A fitting crown for someone who crawled from dirt." The hall roared with amusement. Some laughed out of cruelty, others simply because no one dared challenge the daughter of Lord Aldrich's favored sister. But Elara did not defend herself. She did not cry. She simply lifted her eyes for a brief moment, steady, unblinking, almost regal. And those who caught the glance felt something unfamiliar twist inside them. Not defiance, not fear, but an unnerving reminder that humans were capable of remembering every injustice, even if they said nothing. One man noticed more than the rest. Sir Corvin, a knight recently returned from the border wars, watched her with an expression others couldn't decipher. He had known nobles forced into servants' clothes during wartime, heirs hiding as commoners to survive, women who carried themselves like queens even when scrubbing floors. There was something in Elara's posture, an echo of education, training, upbringing, that a life of poverty alone could never produce. He approached the steward privately, asking who she was. "Some stray," the steward replied too quickly. "A charity case." Corvin heard the lie immediately, and lies, in a house like this, meant danger. Winter thawed into early spring. Tensions in the manor tightened. Noble guests became more frequent. Whispers of coming political alliances circulated like smoke. Lord Aldrich seemed increasingly agitated, sending runners with sealed letters, locking documents in his private chamber, and requesting additional guards at night. And then one evening, just as the sun dipped behind the bare tree line, Elara disappeared. The kitchen women claimed she had run away. The stable boys insisted she left before dawn. Lord Aldrich announced that she had proved unreliable and dismissed herself. But Sir Corvin did not believe it. He searched the manor grounds, the stables, the servant quarters. Everything was too clean, too convenient, too rehearsed. Then, near the back of the east wing, behind a stack of unused firewood, he found something half buried in the mud, something Aldrich's men had missed. A small silver ring, engraved with the very crest that Aldrich had tried so desperately to erase from memory. And the moment Corvin held it up to the fading light, the truth struck him with chilling clarity. Elara hadn't run. She had been removed, silenced, before her identity surfaced, or so everyone assumed, until the rider arrived the next morning, breathless, terrified, requesting an urgent audience with Lord Aldrich, because the girl they believed they had erased had just been seen entering the royal capital. The news spread through Aldrich's manor like a crack of thunder rolling across a silent field. Elara, covered in soot just weeks before, had been seen passing through the southern gates of the royal capital. No escort, no luggage, only a cloak too thin for the late winter wind, and a single purpose none could guess. Lord Aldrich's face drained of color when the messenger repeated the sighting. His fingers trembled against the armrest of his chair, though he hid it behind a curt dismissal. To the court, he claimed that the girl had merely returned to whatever gutter she originally came from. But those who watched him closely, especially Sir Corvin, sensed fear, real, tangible fear, in the way his jaw clenched, in the way he barked orders at the steward to burn unused documents, in the way he demanded his chamber door be double barred at night. Something in Elara's existence threatened him more than any enemy on the battlefield ever had. The truth, however, unfolded far from the manor's tremulous halls. Elara entered the capital quietly, merging into its restless crowds with the poise of someone who had once belonged to such places. The city was a world of contradictions, grand stone towers rising beside markets, overflowing with mud and life. Bakers shouted prices, soldiers marched in tight formation, and the smell of rain mixed with horses and smoke. But Elara walked through it all, as if she were retracing memories that had been stolen from her. Her destination lay on the hill above the city, the residence of Lady Iseldra, her mother's last surviving friend, a widow known for her sharp mind and sharper reputation. The guards at the gate dismissed Elara at first glance, waving her away like a beggar. But when she pulled the silver ring from her cloak, still faintly smeared with the mud from Aldrich's estate, their expressions shifted. The crest engraved upon it, though worn, was unmistakable. A crest tied to a family the crown once relied on and feared in equal measure. Lady Iseldra received her in a dimly lit chamber lined with tapestries depicting battles older than Elara's lifetime. The older woman examined her with a gaze that pierced deeper than any insult the manor had thrown at her. "I knew your mother," Iseldra whispered finally. "She warned me that if you ever arrived alone, it meant betrayal had already begun." Elara did not cry. She had shed all her tears on the road north, the night her mother's grave had been covered with frost. Instead, she placed the ring on the table and told Iseldra everything: Aldrich's deception, the stolen letter, the mockery, the humiliation, the disappearance, meant to erase her existence quietly. The widow listened without interruption. When Elara finished, Iseldra leaned back with a sigh so heavy it seemed to carry years of silent outrage. "Child," she said, "there is something you must know. Your father entrusted Aldrich with a secret, one that could shift loyalties across half this kingdom. You were never meant to live as a servant. You were meant to inherit a claim he feared others would kill to possess." Elara felt her stomach tighten, her breath grow shallow. A claim to what? Iseldra hesitated. Not land, influence. Your mother came from a line the court never openly acknowledged. Your blood ties you to a southern house with royal ancestry. If word spreads, factions will rally behind you, and the man who hid your letter understands that better than anyone. The revelation did not fill Elara with triumph, only a quiet, steady understanding of why cruelty had followed her since childhood, not because she was insignificant, but because she was dangerous. Iseldra, for all her guardedness, did not abandon her. Within days, she arranged discreet meetings with old allies, nobles who remembered Elara's father with respect, soldiers who had served under him, scribes who had kept forbidden records. One by one, they pieced together the truth Aldrich had buried, and in the capital's darkest corners, whispers of a displaced heir began to resurface. But power in such a world was a blade sharpened on both sides. The moment Aldrich learned of her presence in the city, through spies he had paid richly, he prepared to act. His men were already on the road before dawn broke, riding with orders not to reason, not to bargain, but to silence her once and for all. Yet as they approached the capital's southern gate, they found the entrance blocked, not by soldiers, but by a procession of mounted nobles. Banners fluttered in the wind, crests gleamed in the early morning light, and at the front of the formation sat Elara, not in ash-stained rags, but in a deep charcoal cloak edged with silver, her hair braided in the style of her mother's people. She had not risen to power through bloodshed or force. She had risen because the truth, once released, could not be strangled back into silence. The nobles who had once ignored her now bowed their heads as she passed. Even those who doubted her lineage could not deny the alliances she had awakened. When Sir Corvin, riding beside her, presented her with a signet ring replicating her father's long-lost seal, the watching crowds erupted into murmurs that spread through the capital like wildfire. Aldrich's riders froze, caught between fear and disbelief. And then one of the nobles dismounted, approached Elara slowly, and knelt. He took her hand with trembling reverence and kissed the ring she now wore openly. In that moment, the girl mocked at the fire, covered in ashes, stripped of dignity, became the center of a political storm that would reshape the kingdom. But the twist no one expected came later that night, when Elara entered Iseldra's chamber to thank her, only to find the older woman collapsed beside her writing desk, a sealed letter in her hand addressed to Elara. The wax was still warm. The words inside would reveal a truth more dangerous than everything she had uncovered so far. The betrayal had not begun with Aldrich. It had begun at the royal court itself. History teaches us that cruelty often disguises fear, and those who endure humiliation may be carrying a strength the world is not prepared to face. Power is rarely granted. It is reclaimed by those who refuse to let silence define them. If you want more untold stories of resilience, injustice, and the hidden battles that shaped empires, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss a journey into the past that still echoes today.